everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'd like to talk about yoga mats. So yoga mats are one of the first few things that one would usually buy if let's say you were to start yoga. There is not a hard and fast rule that you must actually have or own a yoga mat in order to practice yoga. In fact, I think one of the first few things that people would buy is actually sports attire. But I actually think that it's really important to have a yoga mat in which you're comfortable to work with and work in. It was also one of my hardest decisions as to which particular yoga mat that I want to get, and it took some time and effort to do the research. But at the end of the day, I finally landed on to one. So today I just really wanted to talk about the process of hunting, researching, and eventually choosing a mat that suits the purpose of my practice. More importantly, it's the case that for most of us who would have just started yoga, what typically happens is you just go to a yoga studio or like a fitness center which offers yoga classes, and you just use the mats that are there. But very often, if you've been to one of those classes whereby they don't actually really air the mats, which is quite typically the case, what you'll find is when you use the mat, number one, it's just gonna smell a little bit sour and stinky, which is not ideal because you want to have a good practice, and that would mean a good environment as well as the smell, which is very, very key because there are certain poses that you get really close to your mat, and you wouldn't want to smell the sweat of the other person who had just previously used the mat. That's number one. Number two, it's also the question on how often and how frequent do yoga schools or yoga studios, fitness studios actually refresh their mats. If let's say you go to a really established one, they may they may actually change their mats pretty regularly. But often it's the case whereby if let's say it's overly used, you'll find lots of wear and tear, and it may not allow you to grip or hold onto the mat that well, especially when you're doing poses whereby you're holding it for long, or you're in a vinyasa class whereby the flow requires you to smoothly transition from one pose to the other, and you don't really want that to hinder your practice. So without further ado, let me not ramble on further and get closer to the main point of today's video. Okay, so the point of today's video is to talk about a few factors of consideration that you should have before you decide on purchasing your first yoga mat, or if let's say you're looking to replace your existing yoga mat. One of the things in which I thought would be nice to share before I start this video is to mention the particular yoga mat that I'm actually using at the moment. The one that I'm using at the moment is it belongs to Manduka brand. The specific category or the specific type of yoga mat that I'm actually using is the Lite version. And one of the reasons as to why I chose this particular type under the Manduka brand is because they are light enough for me to transport it to yoga school. That's number one. And number two, it also offers sufficient support for my practice without compromising on the fact that it's too thin. And number three, it's sticky enough for me to continue with my practice. So let's move on then to the factors of consideration that I think one should have before you decide on which particular yoga mat, or whether you feel that this particular yoga mat is going to be suitable for your practice. So I think the first set of considerations, which I rank them quite equally, is number one, the weight, number two, the thickness of the mat, and number three, it's the tackiness or the stickiness of the mat. So I'll go through each one of them, but I think more importantly, it really depends on what your practice is like as well, and what you actually prioritize in terms of your factors of consideration. For me, I feel that these three actually rank as my top priority, and of course you can then listen to the list of factors of consideration that I have and start to have that kind of prioritization in order to then land onto your desired mat. So number one, weight. So the weight of the mat is quite important, but together with that, it ties really closely with the support that the mat offers. Reason is because the support that the mat offers sometimes is it's correlated to the thickness of the mat. And what I mean by that is, if let's say you're doing a lot of jump poses, if let's say you're resting on your knees a lot during your practice, you would want something that is relatively thick so that it doesn't feel like you're doing your practice on the ground, which may feel slightly uncomfortable, especially if you're holding in each of these poses for a long time. That has has to be balanced also with the weight, because if you think about it, the thicker the mat, the heavier the mat is likely going to be. Then you then have to question whether you are someone who much like to have your yoga mat in one place. Then you don't really have to consider about the weight so much, because it's just going to be there. Or if you want something that's more transportable, you might need to consider how heavy a mat do you want, so that it does not deter you from not bringing your mat to the studio, or not bring the mat back home to continue with your practice. So I think these two are quite correlated in that sense. And the third thing that I mentioned in terms of top prioritization is the tackiness or the stickiness of the mat. So take for example, if you are in downward dog position, would you much like to be like sliding your way down, or like putting a lot of effort and grip just to stay in one particular position? I don't think that's the most comfortable thing, or that isn't quite the thing in which we want in our practice. So I feel that it is important for you to test and try the mat just to feel how it feels like, and not forgetting it's also for some of you with like sweaty palms. I think that's another consideration, because I think the one that I'm currently using right now, the Lite version, it has very good grip. And that is what I really like about it, because I am able to move through poses, and if let's say I get a little sweaty during my practice, it does not hinder my practice too much that I have to keep wiping down the mat in order to continue with it, and I think that's pretty disruptive. So the first tier would be weight, tackiness, as well as the support, which is the thickness of the mat. A lot of effort and grip just to stay in one particular position. I don't think that's the most comfortable thing, or that isn't quite the thing in which we want in our practice. So I feel that it is important for you to test and try the mat just to feel how it feels like, and not forgetting it's also for some of you with like sweaty palms. I think that's another consideration, because I think the one that I'm currently using right now, the Lite version, it has very good grip. And that is what I really like about it, because I am able to move through poses, and if let's say I get a little sweaty during my practice, it does not hinder my practice too much that I have to keep wiping down the mat in order to continue with it, and I think that's pretty disruptive. So the first tier would be weight, tackiness, as well as the support, which is the thickness of the mat. Okay, so I think the second layer of consideration that many of us would have would be the price of the yoga mat. And that I feel is quite closely related also to the material of the mat. Reason why is because the price of the mat depends on the materials that is being used. Number one, whether you are someone who is environmentally friendly and would much like an eco brand, and anything that is eco usually comes with a premium price tag. So you need to be comfortable to be able to pay, say, maybe 10 or 20% more. That's number one. Number two, it's also considering what is the price in which you're willing to pay for your mat. So take for example, if you're willing to pay $10 or $20 versus up to $100, I think the range that is offered or is available to you is going to differ quite a fair bit. Not forgetting you would want to consider also the durability, because if a mat is going to last you a lot longer, you can then think about spending a little bit more so that at least it is spread over its lifespan, and it does not feel like so much of a pinch when you're paying for it today, because you know that only in 5 to 10 years time, which I think is the case for Manduka's yoga mats, you will be able to enjoy it for that period of time, and you don't actually have to change it that often as compared to maybe say a slightly cheaper mat, but you have to change it very frequently. So that would be my second tier of consideration. Not forgetting there's a difference between eco mats as well as the rubber synthetic mats. So take for example for Manduka, when I was doing my research, I realized that there are two main types of mats that they offer. Of course, there's still others that they do, but most people were just considering two main options. Number one is their pro mats, which is what Manduka originally came up with. They are very durable, and they last through time. When I mean time, it's like years, not even 5 to 10, possibly even longer. So you don't really have to consider like having to change your mat that frequently and so on. Reason is also because they're using a particular kind of rubber, but on the other hand, if let's say you're eco-friendly, these rubber is actually not it does not break down that easily, or it does not break down as per how you expect of an eco brand. That is in part also one of the reasons as why Manduka decided to come up with their eco version, because I think a lot of yogis out there, they are also quite environmentally friendly and they try and use eco products, which is what this eco mat actually uses. The material that it uses is actually natural rubber, which allows it to break down without harming too much of the environment, making it more sustainable as well. So if let's say you have a preference of each of which, you will then have to then consider the price in which you have to pay, and don't forget to remember that durability is also important, unless you are someone who is only planning to do yoga for a few months. Okay, so I think the third thing in which is quite important for some people is actually the style of the yoga mat. So you would see a lot of different kinds of yoga mats out there in the market. There are various colors, there are various designs, and of course you would want to find something that suits or is within your preference list. For some people, they may like certain colors. For some people, they may enjoy certain designs, and ultimately this is a connection that you have with your mat, and you want to use something in which you really like as part of your practice. Ideally, you find something that you like and you're able to, and it fits the rest of the factors of consideration. For me, I rank that the last, because I think that what's most important is being practical, because you're just going to use the mat primarily for yoga practice. The colors, yes, as much as you have a certain color preference, certain design preference, but if let's say it does not hit the tier 1 and the tier 2, I think that would not be a mat that I would go for. So ideally you want to hit all 3 tiers, then that would be your perfect mat. But if not, I think if you just hit tier 1 and tier 2, I think that is a more than good enough mat. So one important thing to think about is also, together with the style of the mat, is the length of the mat. For some people you're really tall, and for some people you're petite, for some people we are average height. So I do know of mats that are offered in various lengths, but as for Manduka, I'm not sure about the other brands out there because I didn't venture into the other yoga mat brands. I just did preliminary research. I tried this mat and I really fell in love with it, which is why I chose it. And the length came in 2 different lengths. One was 180 centimeters and the other one was 210 centimeters. Depending on how tall you are, if you feel like you're above average height, then go for the much longer one, because it will serve you with better purpose. As you do some of the jump through poses or as you move through your poses, you wouldn't feel like you're restricted by the length of the mat, which sometimes is not the most pleasant thing when you have to keep shifting your body just to make sure that you land within that sweet spot that is possibly too small for you. Okay, so I think that is all for today's video. I hope I have shared sufficient for you guys to think about, and will be able to find a perfect mat for you. It was one of my toughest decisions because I know that it's something that I would spend money on and I wouldn't refresh, or like I wouldn't change it for a good amount of time, which is why I spent some time researching, some time trying as well, and ultimately deciding how I want to buy it or where I want to buy it from. So I hope this video serves you with some useful tips as well as information. If you do like this video, I hope you give a like and a thumbs up. If you like my videos and you would like to check out more, please do subscribe to my channel. I hope to come up with more variety of videos as well. So if this is the sort of video that you like, feel free to comment below. I'll read them, or you can just drop me an email. There is contact information down below. And with that, I wish you all the best in finding the perfect yoga mat and a good practice. Bye!